Here is something that sounds completely backwards. The boring spreadsheet sitting on your kitchen table might be building more wealth than your investment account. I know how that lands. Everybody online tells you the same thing. Invest, 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 and let compound interest do the heavy lifting. But the data tells a quieter story. In early 2026, the American personal savings rate fell to around 2.6%. That is one of the lowest readings in more than 65 years. The long-run average since 1959 sits near 8.4%. That gap right there is the whole game. By the end of this video, you will understand why the wealthiest people you know quietly obsess over a number that has nothing to do with the stock market. Welcome back to Elite Grind Group. I am Marco Valenti. On this channel, we break down the quiet mechanics of real wealth, the moves that never trend, the habits nobody posts about, and the math that actually moves the needle. Today, we are taking on one of the biggest misunderstandings in personal finance, the belief that investing is the thing that makes you rich. Because here's the truth. Most creators skip right past. For the first stretch of your wealth-building journey, your savings rate matters more than your returns. Stick with me, because the third point is the one almost nobody talks about. Point number 1. The savings rate beats returns early. Let us start with the math that breaks the myth. Imagine two people, both starting from zero. One earns a spectacular 12% return, but only saves a few percent of their income. The other earns a modest 5% return, but saves 20% of what they make. In the early years, it is not even close. The aggressive saver pulls ahead and stays ahead for a long time. Why? Because when your invested balance is small, your contributions are doing almost all the work, not your returns. A great return on a tiny account is still a tiny number. There is a crossover point, years down the line, where returns finally take over as the main driver. But the engine that gets you to that crossover is your savings rate, and your savings rate is built by one thing: budgeting. Point number 2, you control. Budgeting, not returns. Here is the part that should give you a sense of control. You do not get a vote on what the market does next year. Nobody does. Returns are a hope, not a plan. But your budget? That is 100% inside your control. The dollar you choose not to spend today is a guaranteed dollar saved. No volatility, no bad quarter, no waiting. That is why budgeting is so quietly powerful. It is the only part of the wealth equation you fully command. So the question is not just how do I find a better investment? The sharper question is how much of my income can I move to the right side of the ledger on purpose every single month? Point number 3, the hidden leverage of cutting an expense. Now here is the point most people never hear. Cutting an expense is worth far more than it looks on the surface. There is a well-known framework called the 25 times rule. It comes from the 4% rule for retirement. The idea is that to safely cover an annual expense forever, you need roughly 25 times that amount invested. Watch what that means. Say you audit your subscriptions and trim $200 a month. That is $2,400 a year. Multiply by 25, and you just lowered the size of the portfolio you need by $60,000. Read that again. One calm afternoon with your budget did the same work as adding $60,000 to your investments. No market risk required. This is the hidden leverage inside budgeting, and it is why the wealthy treat recurring expenses like a permanent decision, not a small one. Point number 4, budgeting catches the silent leak. Let us talk about the silent leak: lifestyle inflation. Every time your income rises, your spending quietly rises to meet it. You barely notice, and that is exactly the problem. Here is the proof. Roughly 6 in 10 Americans report living paycheck to paycheck, and that includes around 40% of people earning over $100,000 a year. Let that sink in. A 6-figure income is no guarantee of wealth if the spending grows just as fast. Budgeting is the only tool that catches lifestyle inflation in the act. It forces the raise to go toward your future instead of dissolving into a slightly nicer version of the same life. The people who build quiet wealth are not always the highest earners. They are the ones who refuse to let their spending chase their income. Point number 5, the behavioral foundation. And here is the final piece, the one that ties it all together. Budgeting builds the behavioral muscle that makes investing actually work. Think about it. The investor who has a cash buffer and a clear budget does not panic sell when the market drops. They are not forced to pull money out at the worst possible moment because rent is due. Their boring habit protects their exciting one. In 2026, more workers have been tapping retirement accounts early and leaning on credit just to cover basics. A budget is what keeps you from becoming that statistic. It is the quiet foundation that lets every other financial move you make survive a bad month. Investing gets the attention. Budgeting keeps you in the game long enough to win. Key takeaways. 1. Your savings rate drives your wealth more than your returns in the early years, and your savings rate is built by budgeting. 2. Budgeting is the only part of the wealth equation you fully control. Returns are a hope. A saved dollar is a certainty. 3. Cutting a recurring expense is worth about 25 times its annual cost in invested assets you no longer need. 4. Budgeting is the only tool that catches lifestyle inflation before it quietly eats your raises. 5. A budget is the behavioral foundation that keeps you invested through the rough patches. So no, budgeting is not the boring cousin of investing. It is the quiet force underneath it. It is the part of the plan you can start tonight, with no account minimum, no market timing, and no luck required. The wealthiest people are not chasing the next hot return. They are quietly winning a game most people do not even realize they are playing. If this reframed how you think about money, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, tap the like button, and drop a comment telling me your current savings rate and where you want it to be. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Quick disclosure: Elite Grind Group provides financial education and commentary for informational purposes only. This is not financial advice. Every situation is different, so do your own research and consult a licensed professional before making any money decisions. As always, stay focused, stay consistent, stay elite.